All right. Well, hi everyone. Welcome to the July CSOC Gen3 CSOC working group meeting. Um, we have some interesting talks today, and telling Jawad, it's good that it's not a Jawad talk. We get to hear from some other people as well. Not that we don't love hearing about updates from Jawad, but give him a break for the month and hear from a couple other folks. Um, Typically in these meetings, we'll quickly go around the room and hear updates from folks on either introductions if you're new, or updates on what your group has been doing that are sort of relevant to this to this forum in terms of what CSOC or Gen3 operator activities that you've been doing. After that, we have a talk from Sarah Volk de Garcia on the UChicago group, who's going to talk about the requester service, sort of an introduction to that for granting access to data sets. And then we'll hear from Conrad Leonard on some work they're doing that's not using requester, but is sort of analogous. And maybe we'll discuss on how those two efforts might be coordinated. If we have time, we'll hear a short update from Alan Walsh on Crow. So we'll see if we have time for that. But I'll kick off passing around the ball here. No particular order. If the Luca, do you want to go first for data for the common good?
Yeah, not much from us. Gonna be quick. We've been mostly working on getting up to date with the deployment, so nothing else from us.
Okay, cool, thanks. And Conrad, I don't know if you want to give an update separate from your talk on what the Australian Biocommons team has been doing, or if Nagasri or somebody else wants to give that update.
Yeah, I think Nuggets 3 will have some interesting things to say about deploying the new front end. My team has mostly been working on other things at the moment.
Yeah, thank you, Conrad. So we are trying to update all the front-end framework services, like Gen3 services. We are trying to update. Yeah, and also like yeah, sorry about that. We are Gen3 platform. We have update Omnix 3 Gen3 platform we are deploying. So for that, we have updated all the front-end framework and other Gen3 services as well. Yeah, we are trying to figure out some issues with that. Yeah, that's
How's the front end framework deployment going?
Yeah, after we have updated all the services, like some of the submission browse data, like some of the services, it's actually giving the issue. We are trying to figure out it. And also we recently merged with the Gen3 Helm to our previous repository. So that is also some changes are there. So actually we are trying to figure out those things.
Okay, thanks. Well, if you run into issues, if you haven't already, I haven't looked recently, but ping the Gen3 community, of course.
Sure. Thank you.
Thanks. Then Matt Pessel, do you care to introduce yourself?
Oh, sure. Yeah, just a quick introduction. Yeah, this is my first time here, so greetings all. I'm from the University of Auckland in New Zealand. You probably know Claire. Claire's put me on to you folks as suggesting that I might want to come along and meet you all because of some recent restructurings here at the university. It looks like I'm going to be called in to help support the Gen 3 deployments on a couple of projects here. So I'm busy learning all that I can on all of these things. So I'll probably be quite quiet and just listen for a good long time. But I look forward to hearing what you all have to say. So.
Okay. Oh, great. Nice to meet you and welcome. I see a user, I'm not sure, Bodhi. I don't know who that is. Sorry if that's somebody I actually know, but Bodhi EM.
That would be me.
Hi.
Hi. Trying to put up my video. Yes. Hi, I'm from Indiana University. I work with Professor Alan Walsh. We work on Crow and the ACK is trying to develop a way to deploy the application using those.
Okay, perfect. Maybe we'll hear
Yes.
some more of that at the end then. I think there was some time. Thanks, welcome.
Thank you.
Alan, do you have additional updates for your group that you're
Super
working
quick, we're working on a deployment of our Indiana Precision Oncology and simultaneously working to federate that with the Childhood Cancer Data Initiative in NCI, which, as I just learned yesterday, doesn't use the data mesh capabilities in Gen3. I sort of thought that they were, and we found out that they kind of have their own way of doing it today, but so we'll be learning how to do that. If anyone in the Gen3 community is a participant in CCDI, and if you've already gone down that road, I would love to talk to you. So please let me know.
We were part of this CCDI Federation, and we are the only one using the Gen3 framework. That's probably why we didn't use any mesh.
Got it. Could I reach
happy to
out to
talk
you?
further. Yeah.
Thank you, Luca. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Alan. Anything else?
No, that's it. Thanks.
And Kyle, all right.
Yeah, we've been mainly spending time trying to, we're working on a plugin for Git LFS that connects it to IndexD. So that using the DIRS protocol, but, you know, create a large Git repository, point to a bunch of different large files, and then you can use Git LFS to pull, localize those files, and it'll pull them directly from IndexD. We kind of have a working prototype up and running. I think the big caveat on it is that it's very SHA code based. So the SHA codes need to be present in IndexD in order to make it work. We haven't figured our way around that yet, but that's something we've been starting to do more with on our side.
Okay, cool. All right. I think that just leaves us with the CTDS group. Sorry, let me know if I missed anybody, any other group. Jawad, do you want to give just a quick update and prepare folks for maybe a presentation in the next meeting?
Yeah, so we got Otzi working with Keycloak, and we got a UI for Postgres, and we got an Elasticsearch integration working. On a side, Ed has been working on making our Terraforms deployable from anywhere and in one shot. So hopefully we get to spend some time with the Terraform integration as well until next time. So you can bootstrap the entire thing, especially in AWS. And then we can look into on-prem and other clouds after that. But the idea, yeah, we'll have some fun updates for the next presentation at least.
Awesome. Okay. Any other announcements anybody wants to make before we get into the agenda? All right, Sarah, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Let me get over here and share my screen. All right. Can you guys see my presentation?
Yes.
Awesome. All right. So I am going to do a brief overview of how Gen3 Requester works and highlighting some ways that you may want to pay attention in setting it up. So Requester is an API that lets you manage access requests. And what's awesome is that it lets you sort of scale your access granting and revoking, and it's an auditable approach. So you can, as I say, both grant access and you can revoke access And so I have provided the link to the requester GitHub repo and a link to the requester API documentation, but I've taken a screenshot of some of these APIs. All of our requester APIs have the prefix requester. And so, as I say, it is fairly scalable. It does require some manual, the approval process is manual. And so if you have, I don't know, scads of requests, that could start to become difficult. But it's also auditable. So you can see who has requested things, who has been granted requests, who has had their requests revoked or their access revoked. And so that's very helpful too. Another useful feature is that you can integrate Requester with third-party tools that will let you visualize the request. So the Requester service itself creates a log, but in order to actually get that request, you either need to, physically go to the requests page, or you can have Requester set it up so that it sends the request to something like Zendesk or a help desk or things like that. Anything that has a REST API, I think, can receive the requester information, just to make it a little easier to receive those. And what's nice too is that it allows you to create kind of complicated policies and makes it really easy to, grant or revoke those policies. So the way it works, you have some resource for which you want to control access. You enable Requester in your Gen3 instance. So if you're using the Helm deployment, it is disabled by default, so you would need to enable it. You need to create a policy in the user YAML that identifies a role that has permissions that you want to grant, and a resource that will be to which your users are going to get access. And you also need to create a separate policy that allows all authenticated users to create Requester requests. Otherwise, they won't be able to do that. And so your authenticated users can request access, and that will, send the request to the requester log. And however it is that you see it, whether you just, go to the, back end and look at the log, or whether you have a Zendesk or something receiving it, you get the request ID, and you can, whoever is in charge of making the decision for approving access or not, they can either grant that access or not in a fairly simple way. And so then as soon as that access is granted, it's ready. There's nothing else that needs to roll. Maybe they just need to log in and log out, but it's immediate. So Requester allows admin users to manage your access requests. And so I've created, hold on, let me move my, there we go, my Zoom things. So I've taken a couple of screenshots of policies and roles from a user YAML that might represent what you might want to have. So for example, if we've got our roles here that will control what, what permissions you have. So someone with requester admin would be able to do anything, and you've got, reader, creator, updater, deleter. And so anyone with all authenticated users should have this role. And so then with these policies, with these roles, you then create policies that combine the role with particular resources. And so someone with the requester creator policy here would be able to create a request, in this case, for this study endpoint, MDS gateway endpoint, for any of these. All right. And so we can restrict who can see the existing access requests so you would need to have requester reader in order to be able to see them. Requester updater will allow you to change the status to approve them. All right. And so this is an example of how someone might do this to grant access to a project. So we've created this requester updater role and a policy that uses the requester updater role for a particular project resource path. And so someone who requests access to this policy they would be allowed to grant access or approve access for anyone who's requesting access to this project. And so then you can create a group in your user YAML that that would let whoever have this policy. So what's nice is that requester can be configured to, sort of adapt to your access request workflow. And so here you have someone submitting a request. And so it's submitted initially, it has a draft status. And so it will stay in draft until it's either approved. And if it is approved, this is like the manual step, then it's signed. Or you could leave it in draft and then they won't get access. Or you can change it to, I think, rejected, and then they can request again. So what's nice is that because requester allows you to grant access to a policy, if you can come up with a policy in the user YAML, you can use requester to grant access to it. So if you've got a combination of permissions and a resource, you can use requester to grant access to it. Hold on, let me move my Zoom people again. Okay, so I just stole this directly from the GitHub repo, but this is overall how the requester workflow is going to work. So the user will fill out the access request form, and that on the back end, it'll go to requester and it'll generate this request ID. That's what you're going to need to approve the request. And it, makes, it collects information about the username and what resources they're requesting access to. You need something to send this on. So this is for CTDS Gen 3 instances, we use Zendesk to send this to us. And so this is how we'll see the request is there. We will make our decision, and using the endpoint, we'll change the status to signed if we want to approve it. And the thing is that in order for the user to find out that they've been approved, you have to manually send the email. Requester doesn't have a built-in way to send that on. This is also in the GitHub repo, but actually I think I've already covered that. So I also in my presentation I can share links to how requester is enabled in the Heal values YAML. So Heal is a project that uses requester. And I've also linked to the requester values YAML that's in the Gen 3 Helm repo. And I can do a demo, but I was a little reluctant because it would be showing people's emails. So I didn't want to do a live demo.
That makes
Or
sense.
I can take questions.
Yeah, are there any questions for Sarah? Thanks, Sarah.
I do have a couple of questions. I assume by our Gen 3 default setting is the access you can request is by project, correct?
So you can set it up to request access by project. It's if there's a resource path, then you can like you can set it up to request access to whatever resource path. I mean, so I guess I should say, Jawad, feel free to correct me. I'm not a dev, but this is my understanding.
Yeah, that makes sense. We did implement something similar a couple of years ago, but it's more specific to our specific use case that we need to be more granular and like if we have to give access to, I don't know, let's say part of a project, so 500 subjects, we can just like add 500 resources because the system as this is designed now, and that's a different topic, will stop performing. Like if there are too many resources in Arborist, ES and everything else was like slow down atrociously. So what we did was implementing a way to save filters, that we call it. So like whatever selection of filters you do on the expression page, you can save that, and then the request is associated to that selected subcohort. So if you guys are interested in that, when I mentioned it a couple of years ago, you weren't, but if you guys are interested in that, we can look in a way of integrating what we did with these. But I don't know if anyone else that beside the group in New Zealand, I don't know if anyone else that was interested in getting more granular access. So that's why the thing kind of died. The discussion of bringing it back a few years ago.
Oh, that's very interesting. I think I can actually think of a group who would be interested in more granular access. Michael, do you have thoughts on that?
Oh, I mean, this is a common question, Luca. You're not, unique in that, for asking that. I think we've, come up with workarounds and like having lots of projects, but yeah, that's not, gonna work in all cases. So, yeah, we can, I don't know. I can't think of anything on the immediate roadmap, but I don't know. We should keep that conversation going, to see if there's a way to incorporate that, since, yeah, that seemed like a neat feature you added.
Great, thanks. Conrad?
Thanks, Sarah. That was really informative for us. It certainly looks like there's a lot of overlap between the responsibilities of requestor and REMS, perhaps just a slightly different focus on the UI elements in REMS and maybe more of the life cycle of the application management. In terms of the UI experience in Gen 3, what does that look like for someone who's requesting data?
Sure. Well, I can show that. So give me just a second and I'll pull it up. Let me log in real quick. Sorry, it's making me verify. Great. All right, let me share my screen. So this is the HEAL platform. And we use Requester to control access or to grant access to both workspace and study registration. I already have workspace access, but I can request access for study registration. So I'll show you how to do that. You have to be logged in, so I'm already logged in. And so here, this request access, this is where it'll trigger it. And so I believe Requester comes, like if you enable it, there is some sort of really generic form here. I'm actually not 100% sure about that, that you would need to like customize for your own purposes. And so here, it's asking us to fill out information. And so then we would submit, which actually, I guess I can show you what it looks like since this will just be mine. Hold on, let me stop sharing and I'll log into our Zendesk so you can see what it looks like. And so now Requester has taken my access request. Let me go to our Zendesk.
So for those of you who don't know, Zendesk is a help desk ticketing system that we use, our user services team uses for lots of things, and then it just shows up, goes there.
Great. Okay. So this is what the requester will send to either Zendesk, but also this is exactly what the log of requests would look like too. And so this request ID is the key thing. That is what I would need to change the status for. I guess actually I can't show the log, but and it would grant me access to do various things in this study. I don't know if that was super helpful.
No, that gives me a good idea of how the pieces fit together, which, yeah, it's useful. Thank you.
Yeah. Are there other questions?
Great. Thanks, Sarah. Just a quick ping, Jawad or Peter, did you have anything else to add to the discussion on Requester that would be helpful for others to know?
I'm coming on camera to say no, I don't have anything to add right now about it.
Yeah, neither do I. This was pretty well covered, Sarah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, great. Thanks, Sarah. I think we'll pass it on to Conrad now. And Sarah, if you can share.
Yep, I definitely can. Oops. I think I started in the middle. Apologies.
Giving away all the slides.
No. Okay.
No spoilers.
Sorry, Conrad.
That's all right. I think we can skip this. You've seen my head already. Next slide, please. So this is how this is an introduction to REMS, and partly it's about how we use REMS in Australia generically and how we're sort of planning to fit it into our Gen3 deployment. That might slightly modify based on what we've seen today. Next slide, please. So this is for the devs in the room who might not be familiar with the terms of art in data governance. And so these concepts are pretty common across the world, but the language used can differ. And here we're using the GDPR terms from Europe, if only because they kind of stand alone and don't overlap with other terms like custodian and steward that can have double meanings. The controlled access for controlled access data, the data controller is typically the gate for approval. So they're the decision maker, and they decide things like, is the research of the kind consented to by the study participants, and does the researcher agree to the terms of data usage, like no de-identification, no one sharing, and that sort of thing. And next slide, please. So just to motivate what is to follow, this is kind of the ideal world that everyone thinks is what data access requests should look like. And next element, please. And this is kind of what it looks like in practice. I don't know if you've ever been on a data access committee or a sysadmin who's trying to provide group level access to a data resource, or even somebody who's got to update a manual config file somewhere. But this is quite frustrating. And the idea of RENS is just to kind of bring all these pieces into one place and automate the process a little bit. I believe they sell themselves as semi-automated data access approval, which is an interesting idea. Next slide, please. So just a little bit about the software. It's out of Finland, unusually. It's written in Clojure, which means that it's probably had fewer community contributions than it might otherwise have had. It's pretty well supported in Europe in the research infrastructure community. It's fairly mature product, actively maintained. It's got a very rich API, which actually looks quite a lot like the requester API that you showed, Sarah. You know, many of the endpoints overlap, which makes
Did we lose Conrad? I can't hear.
Oh, nope, I couldn't either. All right, I thought it was internet on my end. Uh-oh.
I can hear Michael either now, but I think it's because he's on mute.
Yes, I was on mute, but thanks for asking out loud because I thought it was me too. Oh, wait a minute for Conrad.
Sorry about that. I lost you completely.
Oh,
All
I'm
right.
back.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yep.
Oh. Well.
Can you hear us, Conrad?
How about now?
Oh, yes. Yes.
No. How about now?
We can hear you.
We hear you, Conrad. Can you hear us?
Oh, you can hear me? Awesome. I just couldn't hear you for a second there. Sorry, my Zoom has just closed twice on me. So if that happens again and I don't come back, my apologies. So let me just get back to where I was. What problems is REM solving? For data controllers, it's a flexible way to control, to configure the access request system. So you can set up organizations if you've got different organizations.
Uh-oh.
I wonder if you might have an easier time calling in.
Sorry about that. I will try one last time. And if not, please go ahead without me.
Okay, you can, I don't know if turning off your video will help if it's a bandwidth issue.
Yeah, look, I will try that. Okay, so what problems is REM solving? Benefit to the data controller is a way to sort of configure the system how you want it and actually manage the application requests once they come in. And the benefit to the applicant is that it's all kind of centralized. You can see the status of your application. and make amendments and bring other people on board, which is quite a common use case. Is you as a PI or CI want to have, you know, your entire research group on the same application rather than everyone having to log in and make their own application. And that's all done through OADC because the users are uniquely identified that way. Next slide, please.
Did we lose you again, Conrad? All right.
What's going on?
Oh, are you back? Conrad, we could revisit your presentation at the next meeting if it's not going to work today, and maybe move on to do the Crow proof of concept. Maybe we'll give Conrad Conrad, I don't know if you heard that.
I did. Look, I'm willing to persist as long as you're willing to put up with this
Okay, all right,
rather
no,
unfortunate experience. So
keep on
I'll
going.
try and hurry through the remaining slides. You know, there's probably only an interesting bit really at the end. So maybe if we skip through the next couple of slides. Yeah, so this is maybe a little bit interesting to this audience. So how we deployed Ofsted out of the box with Gen3 Biocommons. It's just config based Ofsted. You know, you have policies in the user.yaml and users who are actually attach those policies in the config. And when somebody makes a data access application, that involves the Gen3 admin physically updating the config file, which is obviously not great. Next element and next slide, please.
Oh, like all the way to the next slide.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Sorry.
And thanks to some work from Gordon and Uber at Biocommons, we moved to an OADC based authorization mechanism where the authorization is actually coming from OADC claims. So you've sort of shifted the responsibility for the source of truth of the authored into the AAI system, which is nice, but that still does leave somebody in the loop who has to set those things in the AAI. So it's gone from the Gen3 admin doing that to the AAI admin doing that. Next two elements and next slide, please. So REMS kind of sits outside and handles all that side of things. There's obviously still the data controller in the loop because they're the decision maker. They need to actually be in charge of the decision. But in terms of how that is propagated to an access grant in the REM system, that's all automated. It can send emails. That's, I guess, one thing I sort of picked up on that Requestor doesn't currently do, which is, I guess, you know, a fairly minor feature, but it is convenient in the sense that, you know, the decision maker goes in, they approve or reject, and all the notification stuff is handled. Just trying to get to my speaking notes for this slide. Yeah, so the two wins here are the application submission, review, and decision processes are well defined within REMS. It's all configurable. And the decision of the data controller to actually grant the access is propagated in an automated fashion. I can talk a little bit about how that's done in practice on the next slide, please. So there are some post endpoints, just some webhooks in REMS that get triggered when the access decision is made by the controller, and that uses the AAI API to update the status of their membership in a group, or potentially just picking up on what Luca was saying earlier, a granular set of access grants, maybe at the attribute level or at the individual resource level rather than the data set level. And next slide, please. And I guess the sort of final piece of the puzzle where I thought Requestor might come in is probably not using its full capacity, looking at what Sarah's presented. But if we could start the application process from within Gen3, then you would be essentially taking the user ID from the logged in user. And in this case, a data resource, but it looks like you obviously can provide access to workspaces and other cool things through that mechanism as well. And then we would be using REMS to actually provide access. It would be acting, I guess, like Zendesk acts for you, in the sense that that's where the decision maker is seeing the request and actioning it.
Oh, nice.
And that is the end of my presentation. I'm sorry, I'm not going to give a live demo either, for the same reason, which is that our systems all have real people's usernames and emails in them, even when they don't really have real data in them.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Conrad. Are there any questions for Conrad?
Could you share the link to the REMS, I don't know, site or whatever, maybe the GitHub repo or?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks.
Conrad, I don't know if I missed it. I probably did. How, with the current implementation, is somebody still manually editing the user YAML, or I might have missed that detail?
No, so the idea is you set up policies that correspond to dataset resources. So that's a kind of one time per resource job. And then the actual implementation of access happens through the OADC claims. So that maps onto a policy. So I think the claim in our case is called groups, but it could be anything. You just need to map something that you're getting from the OADC OP into a policy. I think some of those details you'd have to ask Gordon about.
Cool.
I have a question for Conrad. What's the link between, so your REMS resource or your application item, how do you get from the Gen3 side to the REM side? Yeah, that in the box there.
Yeah, look, that's a great question. At the moment, that's sort of done it as a one-off thing where you say, okay, we have data set XYZ. We are going to create a policy for that in the user.yaml. And then you would have to map that in REMS when you set up a resource. So part of the reason that this looks different from the Requestor side of things is that we don't live in a sort of Gen3 first world. So we have resources that know nothing about Gen3. They're just accessible through Globus or some other mechanism. And so people have started with the idea of giving access to a resource separate from Gen3. You could do it either way. If you're living in a Gen3 only world, it looks like probably Requestor is a neater way to do things, because then you don't need to do this, manual mapping process, which is a one-off thing, but it obviously requires you getting the strings right.
And every time
we have
you
another
data set, you need to do the configuration.
Correct.
Of that side.
Yeah. So we kind of go the other way in a sense that we have a little integration in REMS where every time a new resource is added there, it goes and adds a group into the AAI system. So the AAI system becomes kind of the source of truth of entitlements that exist even outside the Gen3 world.
Yep. Great, thanks.
Any other questions for Conrad? Well, I guess before we move on, I'll just think about like what are the next steps here. If you want to add anything to requester, or I don't know, like if I'm not sure what you're thinking based after having seen the requester. If you see some benefits of modifying something in Gen3 or just working with it if it has the features to integrate with what you have. I don't know. What are you thinking?
My thought is that we'll need to explore requester in a bit more detail. It looks like particularly the ability to grant access to things like workspaces that don't really map very well to REMS, which is more of a physical or a byte type resource management system. So to the extent that requester is specifically built for Gen3, that looks pretty awesome, and we just need to explore how that will map out to REMS. I think we will be sticking with REMS just because what I was saying to Matt, that we have resources that don't have a corresponding data set within Gen3, and that's something we want to continue to manage through REMS. So we may not be using the full feature set of requester, but yeah, it definitely looks like something we want to explore just because it will start the access request experience from within Gen3, which is where people are when they discover a cool data set. Because at the moment, it's kind of an out of band thing where somebody sees some data in Gen3 that they want to apply for and then separately log into REMS to apply for that specific data set. So we'd like to at least smooth that journey.
Okay. Makes sense. Yeah, let us, I don't know, keep us updated if you on how that goes, and if you need any you see
Yeah.
some updates are needed in requester, keep us in the loop and we'll work through that.
Thank you. Absolutely. And I think a lot of this will be facilitated by us moving to the new front end, which looks like a lot more customizable in terms of where you can put buttons and links and things like that to actually get out to another system.
Mm-hmm. All right. So we had one other item on the agenda, but I want to make sure that if folks had any more discussions on requester or requesting or granting data access, if there was any other topics there that people wanted to discuss.
I think I had one more thing to say about requester. I did not get a chance to look into it deeply, so I can't field a ton of questions about it, but something that I think is really interesting, at least in Heal, I know that requester is able to sort of generate policies to, define, it generates policies sort of on the fly, so they don't already have to exist in the user YAML. And so that's how Heal is able to, sort of grant access to whatever 1,200 different studies as different resources. I don't have more information on how it's able to do that, but I know it's able to. So I guess I wanted to put that on people's radar since this is a requester presentation.
Yeah, that sounds very interesting.
All right. Thanks, Sarah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Alan, do you have enough time to do the update on Crow, or should we defer?
We can do a really quick, we can start it and then we'll hopefully have further updates down the line. As Jimmy's getting ready, Jimmy's really the Crow expert. So we'll let him screen share. Is that possible? Can somebody give him the ability to screen share? And while you're working that out, maybe let me take a moment just to give some context here. I'm the reason Jimmy's working on this because I got very excited about this. Crow is an open source project that is being led jointly by AWS and Google, and Microsoft has involvement as well. They all three have thrown their support behind this, but heavily driven by both AWS and Google. So the EKS teams and the GKE teams to address some of the challenges that their customers have brought to them, specifically around internal developer platforms, IDPs. And so we're excited about this because we think it fits perfectly with what is going on with Gen3 admin. Because I think of Gen3 admin as an IDP, maybe a very specific one for the Gen3 application, but it functions in my mind exactly the way an IDP functions. And so we're excited about the potential to develop this, and we hope if it holds together, if it does what we think it can do, to contribute this for anyone who would be interested, and to ensure that it does plug in perfectly to Gen3 admin. It could become one of those options, as Jawad described, I think several months back, that maybe there's a whole menu of ways that you can do your deployments. And we're just proposing this as maybe yet another way that you could do a Gen3 deployment. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Jimmy and let him explain what Crow is and how it works.
Jimmy, if you're speaking, I don't hear you.
Yeah, sorry about that. I am pulling up the charts for simple deployment. Yes, these two. All right, so I'm just demonstrating the power of Crow. I would like to show you a resource graph definition, which is the resource graph definitions are sort of like the CRDs of Crow. Generally, what Crow does is to abstract your regular deployments. So, for instance, take a look at this. This is a custom resource for an ACK. ACKs are AWS controllers for Kubernetes. They create they create AWS resources on Kubernetes. And here we are with a VPC CIDR. Over here we have a subnet. This is another custom resource. And all of these custom resources are templated all together. See the VPC, subnet 1, subnet 2, subnet 3, and a security group. And all of these templated together. And now, why are we templating? We're templating because we have variables that we're passing between individual custom resources. So like the VPC ID is needed by the subnets are could be needed by the security group, and such. So all these variables are passed all the way down. And if you take a look at this, those variables that are passed are stored in the status section of your schema. Your schema, this little thing here, is used over here for an instance. So when I have an instance, I could say, hey, I want to create a 10 VPCs, all with different names. So the only thing I need to do is to change the name of my networking stack. all of these will be generated as CRDs in your Kubernetes environment. So what happens is you have Crow. Sorry, am I also visible or my video is off? Okay.
We can see your screen.
Okay. So we have resource graph deployment. Now, your resource graphs basically take multiple custom resources that otherwise would have been independent and join them together, kind of like a config map, but orchestrating all these resources in unison. So if I go ahead and delete a subnet, Crow will reprovision that subnet based off what is required for this graph. Crow will monitor your Kubernetes cluster to see whether the resources that it has in its resource graph definition are actually provisioned, and make sure that they are provisioned. So it can replace Helm, it can replace your manifests in general, just one manifest deploying everything for both your application and your cloud stack, basically. So it seems to be a very powerful tool that we can use. That was a minimal deployment right there. Over here, I do have some resource graphs that are bigger. Over here, we have a VPC that is deployed, and also an EKS cluster, both deployed as separate graphs. If you look at the variables, currently there's no way, I haven't shared this with anyone here, so it's going to be hard for me to actually describe everything. But if you take a look at this, you can see that multiple resources have been defined here. All of them are linked together in the status section here. And there are some expected variables that you're going to put in, or you could leave them as their defaults. And this resource graph, coupled with this EKS resource graph, which provisions EKS resources, are joined together in another resource graph at a higher level. Say resource graph 1, and this is level 2.
Jimmy, this is cool. I think we're going to have to break soon. Is there any final wrap-up items or things you want to demonstrate?
Well, not really. The entire point of this is just to emphasize the fact that we could actually deploy both the application and the infrastructure for the application using Crow from a hub cluster.
Yeah, that's the main takeaway is think of Gen3 Crow as combining everything in Gen3 Terraform and Gen3 Helm. And it's Kubernetes native. You're doing everything in Kubernetes. You don't have any, outside dependencies once you define these resource graphs. And obviously you need the underlying pieces, but then because of the support, you could, for example, have one resource graph and say, I want to, deploy to AWS, and this I want to deploy to GKE because they both have support for all of these underlying resources. So more to come, but if you're interested, if there's anyone else who is curious about this and would like to participate, we really do want to start standing up a Gen3 Crow repo and get to work on trying to see if we can make this happen. Because again, the idea would be it would someday, if it's successful, it could plug into Gen3 admin as yet another option, another choice for ways people could do it. Because all you would need for Gen3 Crow is the Kubernetes, the administrative cluster that you already have. Because if you're running Gen3 admin, you have to have an administrative cluster. It would be pretty easy to just layer on Crow to that. And you could start doing deployments pretty easily. So anyway, just let us know. Mostly just want to try to hopefully elicit some interest within the community and others who would be willing to do some development with us.
This is definitely cool. And overlaps with a lot of the existing ones, but this is like Kubernetes native for the whole stack, which is really, really interesting. We've like recently tried adding something similar. I think I mentioned Crossplane, but it's only like IAM resources and buckets per application. So, but this sort of overlaps with more. Yeah, so I'm very interested in seeing like how this develops, and yeah.
All right. Thanks a lot, Jimmy and Alan. Yeah, really, really cool progress report. Okay, I think we've gone a few minutes over, so I want to thank everybody. I think tentatively there'll be some presentations keyed up for next month based on some updates from Jawad, but if folks have some other topics they want to cover, please reach out and let me know. Thanks everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.